All right, why don't we, I think we're probably can get started now. We'll just, people can join us as we go. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's Candidates Forum, which is being presented by the Great Neck News and our parent company, Blank Slate Media. I'm Steve Blank, the editor and publisher of the Great Neck News, and I'm here with Rob Pelez, a reporter whose beat includes Great Neck. We are here virtually with Village of Great Neck Plaza Deputy Mayor Ted Rosen.
Good evening.
And businessman Leonard Katz, who are facing off in a race for mayor of Great Neck Plaza. We will begin in a moment with opening statements of up to 3 minutes for each of the candidates. And that will be followed with questions posed by Rob and myself. We will then go to questions posed by attendees. And then we will follow with closing remarks for the candidates. We're going to try to get this all in within an hour. So we'll want to get going quickly. Just a note, in addition to this Zoom session, this forum will be airing on North Shore Television and will soon air on theislandnow.com, as well as Blank Slate Media's Facebook and YouTube channels that we hope you'll subscribe to at no cost. We have a lot of ground to cover in a short period, so let's get started. I will let the Deputy Mayor, Ted Rosen, begin with his opening remarks.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Rob. And hello to you, Mr. Katz. I'd like to thank both of you, Steve and Rob, for setting this up. Great Neck News. It's important that we do this. As we all know, we are living in a very difficult time with serious challenges facing each of us in our personal lives and facing all levels of government. Now more than ever, we need experienced government leadership. Our record, my record, and my colleagues who are running with me, Pam Markstreit, Michael DeLucia, is one of proven governmental service and leadership. We are ready on day one to work with and lead our village residents and village businesses to meet whatever lies ahead. I have practiced law for many years, primarily in commercial litigation. I'm an experienced arbitrator. I am an associate professor at college, in the college, Queensborough Community College. I teach business law and business organization management. My wife and I have lived in Great Neck since 1974. We raised our 2 children here. I became active in community affairs through PAL, coaching my children, becoming a member of the board of PAL and the trustee of the unit. In the 1980s, the late Mayor Alan Gussack asked me to join the board of trustees. Before he did that, he asked me to head up the newly formed Great Neck Central Auxiliary Police, which I helped to form. Then shortly thereafter, I became a trustee. And later on, under Mayor Stellander, I became the deputy mayor. I have experience in all aspects of village government. I have headed up various departments. I've supervised the code enforcement officers, the building department, at times the DPW. I have been a member of numerous committees in the village and in the Great Neck area, Great Neck Village Officials Association Traffic Committee for one. I am the village's cable commissioner, and I'm a member of the Great Neck North Shore, and I'm a member of the Great Neck North Shore Cable Commission. I'm also a member of the board of directors and secretary of North Shore Public Access TV, which I understand is filming this. I'm a member of the Business Improvement District of our village, and over the past several months, we have worked closely with the BID to help and support our local businesses. My colleagues running with me are both very experienced. Pam Markstreit is a trustee for a number of years. Michael DeLucia is the head of our zoning board of appeals. The opposition facing us do not have such credentials. Instead, their record is one of inexperience and inability. 3 of them running as write-in candidates have 0 experience in government. One of the opponents running for trustee has never, to our knowledge, attended a board of trustees meeting. Even the Zoom meetings that we've had in recent times, even the Zoom meeting we held last night. The other characteristic.
I'm gonna step in because that's our 3 minutes. So if you want to just wrap it up and.
Well, in addition to inexperience is inability to get on the slate, to comply with the requirements of the election law, and inability to maintain the same slate of 3 people running from the beginning of the election season back in January through the election that is going to be held on September 15th.
Okay, I'm going to cut in right here, and that went to 3 minutes and 34 seconds. So Leonard, you've got 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Go ahead.
That's very nice. Thank you. I want to thank you and Robert again for hosting this. I think it's a great idea. As someone who is essentially challenging a well-entrenched, long-term political organization, we appreciate the opportunity to have you format something like this so we can actually reach out to the public. In these times, it's very difficult, as you all know, with the virus conditions. Everyone is very, very careful. Difficult to have meetings in buildings now to talk to people, to get the word out. So this is a great format, and I appreciate it very, very much. I don't think I want to spend any time talking about things Ted's talked about. I would just tell you for myself, I've lived in Great Neck since 1971. I've had 3 children that have gone through all the Great Neck North schools. They've gone to the movies at the Playhouse and the Squire theaters and had egg creams at Frederick's, and we went bowling at the Great Neck Bowl, which is now CBS. We had ice cream at Baskin Robbins, and just enjoyed walking around town, looking at the shops, and that made our community unique. The problem is that moving into town today, kids aren't able to do that. We all know the many issues that need to be addressed, like the number of empty storefronts. We have the highest per capita pedestrian deaths in New York State. And our overly aggressive parking enforcers don't make shoppers feel welcome if they can find a parking space at all. There are crumbling curbs, loose bricks on our sidewalks. People have a difficult time walking sometimes. They're very, very careful. They're frightened sometimes. These are important considerations, and we have to take it into account and plan accordingly. I mean, so much has disappeared from our community that it really saddens and angers me. I believe that the continuing development of our village will lead to increased taxes, hurt current and future residential and commercial property values, and ultimately filter down negatively, impacting on our school and library systems. I guess you might ask, what can I do differently? Well, that's a fair question. And I have a few things I want to put into effect immediately. First, I really want to hear what residents have to say and be responsive to them. I've had numerous people come to me explaining to me how they've had this issue and that issue and the other issue, and they call this the village, they call the central office, they get put on hold, they finally get through. The answers they get are usually, it's not our job, it's someone else's job, it's the county, it's the town, it's not our business. And there's no effort made by the administration to help the people that live here. I don't find it acceptable to tell somebody that's someone else's problem, go deal with them. We're the administration, we represent them and their feelings and their issues, and they look to us to be there for them, and we should be there for them. I've talked about, even currently with this COVID virus, that I believe our village needs what I would call a health commissioner. I've spoken to several people. I believe we can have a volunteer member of the community who has experience in this area that will work with, number one, the nursing facility and the senior citizen facilities. From what I understand, everyone is tested. Well, they're tested once a week. Once a week is not sufficient. We have the technology today to test every day.
I'm gonna cut in here where you've got your 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and I'm we'll give you plenty of chance to move forward
Fine, thank you.
and discuss this. Let me make the first question. Ted, before this election was postponed due to COVID-19, we sat down and you had said that you did not believe that the plaza had a problem with the number of stores that were empty. Do you still think that's true following the pandemic and the toll that it has taken? And if so, what is your plan to address the empty storefronts?
Thank you. I think what I said was there were empty stores, but this is pre-pandemic, but it was not extraordinary compared to comparable downtowns throughout the state and throughout the country. I teach business. I know what's happened in the business world over the last 10, 15 years. E-commerce and a tremendous number of brick and mortar stores have felt the repercussions of e-commerce. And we had empty stores, but it wasn't overly extraordinary compared to other areas. That was pre-pandemic. The problems, unfortunately, and I wish what I'm about to say is not the case, the problems that we will face in the months, perhaps years ahead, after the onset of the pandemic, magnified the problem of the downtown from before. A lot of retail businesses, a lot of food establishments, a lot of restaurants are very much struggling. And some of them are just not coming back. And that's very unfortunate. We in local government have to find ways to support the villages. We've been doing that through the last couple of months of the pandemic. Our village personnel, our building inspector has worked closely with businesses to explain to them the regulations, to help them make their businesses attractive and inviting, maximize available space outside for restaurants, for retail stores if they want to take advantage of sidewalk sales. I'm on the bid board with 2 colleagues from the Plaza Board of Trustees. We've been meeting every week, working to support our merchants. We will continue to do that. Another important thing that we can do is to make sure that our downtown businesses throughout the village take advantage of all the programs that are out there from the state, the federal government, the state, and the local government. 2 weeks ago, I hosted a Zoom webinar. The branch manager of the Long Island SBA office was on. One of the advisors from the Empire State Development Agency was also on. Deputy County Executive for Nassau County was on, explaining the available programs. The village has to be a conduit of information. We have to get our businesses to take advantage of all these programs. I've spoken to the SBA about establishing a field office of the SBA in the Village Hall. And that's something that we're going to work on, where representatives of the SBA can be in the Village Hall maybe certain days a month. I plan on hiring in the village a person to teach and train business people in our village how to promote themselves on social media. That's something that some of our merchants do. Unfortunately, some do not. And I think the village can step in and help those who are not doing that take advantage of that. We are participating with the county in their programs to bring people into Great Neck. The outside dining has been fairly successful. The county executive was in Great Neck 2 days ago. I attended the conference, the press conference. The new program is being launched, Taste Nassau Now.
Okay, Tim, I'm going to,
I have more.
You know, we'll get a chance to come back to it, but I'd like to give Leonard a chance to respond and to ask him, before the pandemic, you said that the number of storefronts, empty storefronts, was a problem. Obviously, the problem has been exacerbated by the pandemic. How would you address this problem?
Well, as I had said before, it's wonderful what the administration is doing now under threat of being deposed, I suppose, because in all these years, they have to own the fact that all those stores that are empty is due to their policies. Notwithstanding everything they claim they've done, the reality speaks for itself. Their record in this area is non-existent. They're a failure at what they've done. We've lost lots of businesses. This town is not the way it was 10, 15 years ago, not even close. Right now, I have a merchant who has joined my team, Marnie Ives from Chrome Chocolatiers. She came on board because she knows, as a retailer, what it means to try to do business in this town. She knows that in the 20 years she's been here, no one from the administration has ever walked into that store to offer her anything in the way of support in any way whatsoever. So they can talk about all these wonderful plans they have, wonderful schemes and dreams. The reality is the reality, and they have to own it. The stores are empty. In terms of the internet, I'm on the executive committee for the Chamber of Commerce of Great Neck, and we've done surveys, and we looked into these areas, because that's what the Chamber does essentially, is be concerned with business. And we find that total business is running between 14 and 18% of the brick and mortar stores. So we're not talking about a huge, huge amount of difference here. It's only 14 to 18%, which of course does affect margins for businesses. But we're not talking about such an amount that it's putting all the stores out of business. We have the ability, and store owners, retailers do, to offer personalized service. You don't get that on the internet. This can be done, and it can be helpful for retailers. In fact, the things that we talked about would be bring retailers together and offer seminars for them, exactly what this deputy mayor decided they're going to do at this point. If not for us, it wouldn't happen, because it hasn't happened all these years. And it's time for a change, and we need a change. We deserve a change, and I'm here to make it happen.
Okay, let me ask both of you this question, and I'll start with you, Ted. This goes to a business environment and to be welcoming and to assisting businesses. Great Neck Plaza is the only village in the town of North Hempstead to bar valet parking. If you become mayor, would you continue that policy?
I believe we did discuss this when I was in your office back several months ago, and my answer then, as I recall, is my answer tonight. The reason we do not allow valet parking is, first and foremost, safety. We have had valet parking in the past, and it has presented tremendous safety issues. We want to support business, but our primary obligation as public servants is to protect the health and safety of the public, all the public. And I can point to places where we had valet parking. We had double parking, and not only is double parking a problem, but people swing out to get around the double parking. People are crossing, and it presented any number of problems. We had several experiences with different valet services, and we had people just valets making U-turns in the middle of the street. We went so far as to try, under Mayor Selander, a village-operated valet parking service. And that did not last. That did not work.
Can I ask
so the answer is, if I may, the answer is valet parking is not appropriate on the streets of our downtown that are heavily trafficked. It may be appropriate in lots. It may be appropriate off-site. And there may be in other areas, quiet streets where you can do it safely. But our experience is it cannot be done safely here.
How is it, then let me just ask a follow. How is it that every other village can do it? The village, it's done on Willis Avenue in Roslyn. It's done
it's done in New York City. But I'm the deputy mayor of Great Neck Plaza. I hope to be the mayor of Great Neck Plaza. My obligation is to the residents of Great Neck Plaza to protect their safety. I don't have authority over other villages. And I have been to many areas in the city, in Queens. You mentioned when we spoke, I think about Bayside. I'm familiar with Bayside. Other villages. I have seen other places where valet parking, in my opinion, should not be happening. I don't have authority with it, but I have authority and responsibility to protect the people of Great Neck Plaza. As much as we want to promote business, safety has to be the #1 concern.
Okay, same question to Leonard.
Thank you, Steve. I'm glad that Ted mentioned the fact that he's accepting the responsibility and he has certain authorities to take care of the residents in the village. And in terms of his responsibilities, I don't think he and the current administration have lived up to it. We have the highest rate of pedestrian problems, fatalities in the state of New York. So all that they're doing, the results again are the same. They haven't done the right job. If the job is done the way he professes they're going to do the job, because he hasn't done it yet, we wouldn't have these problems. We wouldn't be #1 in the state with these fatalities. That's number one. Number two, he has the authority, true, so he has to own all these things. He can't pretend they don't happen and they're not real. This is what, as a result of their inaction in taking care of the problems that are there. He hasn't taken care of residents. Residents have talked to me, they've complained about things, and nothing seems to get done. So many people are frustrated when they call up and they can't get to anybody, or they get pushed off in some way. This has to stop. The administration has the responsibility and the authority to step in and represent them, whether it's with the town of North Hempstead, or it's with Nassau County, or it means going to other villages and finding out what works there. In his considered opinion, valet parking doesn't work. You mentioned several areas where it does work very well, and they're not that much different than Great Neck. So all his protestations to the effect that they looked at it and it doesn't work, I don't believe it. I don't buy it, and I think it's something that should be revisited. I don't know how they set it up in the last time that they did it, supposedly, but if it works someplace else, it should work here. If there are U-turns happening and it's against the law, then you put someone there that gives tickets out. For $225 or $50 a ticket, the U-turns would stop very, very quickly. You make people do the job and do it right. And I don't think they've done the job or done it right. And that's why we're running at this point.
Mr. Blank, may I respond?
Go ahead, Bill.
I find it incredible that Mr. Katz doesn't know how it operated. He lived in this village for 20 years, so certainly he saw that. But the accusation that we have not focused on pedestrian safety is an out-and-out falsehood. Anyone who's lived in Great Neck Plaza, excuse me, sir, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
Is an out-and-out falsehood. Let me just list the projects that we have done, pedestrian and traffic safety projects, most of which have been paid by grants. Barstow Road Roundabout, enhanced electronic pedestrian warning signs on Grace Avenue, Great Neck Road renovation, road diet, traffic calming project, TEP Shorewood Wellwind Road renovation improvement and enhancement project, bulb outs on Bond Street, bulb outs on North Station Plaza and Linden Place, TEP Long Island Railroad Station pedestrian and bicycle safety project, oversized stop signs, including one outside of Mr. Katz's building, improved signage, for example, South Middle Neck Road and Skank Avenue, countdown pedestrian crossing signs, increased crossing time. For a person to live in our village for 20 years and be totally ignorant of these programs is in itself a statement that this person is not qualified to serve in village government.
Okay, Leonard, we'll let you respond.
Thank you. It's interesting you mentioned the stop sign in front of my building, which is true. And
Thank you.
On a listen, credit where credit is due. On a regular basis, people go right through the stop sign. There's no one there to enforce the regulations. I've talked to the police about it, and they say occasionally they put somebody there, but not too often. And if someone complains, they'd have someone there. As mayor, I complain every single day. I want a cop there. I want it stopped. People are afraid to cross streets in this town. All the signs are wonderful. If there's nothing supporting what you're doing, the regulations, there's no consequence to it, people breeze through all the signs. You mentioned some of the projects you worked on. The one in front of the post office. There were weeds growing all around there. The people that own the property there have complained to me, several of them have complained to me, that it affects people, it affects the price of their property, because people come, they see all these overgrown weeds in these areas, and they figure the apartments aren't being taken care of properly. So they're very upset about that. What does the village do? Nothing, because there's a virus and we can't have everybody working today or whatever. Other places don't have these problems. In terms of the projects you did, you got a project on Great Neck Road. We have this median now. And what happens there? It creates huge traffic jams. Every time a FedEx truck comes or a post office truck comes or a UPS truck comes, they double park. What happens? Nobody gets through because we lost a lane. The same thing happens on Bond Street with the railroad station. We had this wonderful project and we lost a lane going into the station area. So now the cars will double park on Bond Street waiting to pick people up that are coming home from the city. These are unintended consequences. No one thinks about it. You wind up getting all these wonderful awards, but we have to live with the consequences in this town. The awards don't help any for these problems. It reminds me of, there was years ago, there was a beer called Peel's Beer, Bert and Harry Peel's. They had great commercials and they won awards for the commercials, but nobody bought the beer. So they went out of business finally. Awards are wonderful. And the fact we get grants is terrific, but there's matching money involved also. Whether it's $50, $60, $80, $90,000, that's our money is being spent. There was a meeting held specifically about the area in front of the post office. And the residents all said, please don't do it. Don't put a park there. Fine. You didn't put a park there. You created a plaza instead. You changed the name and did it anyway. This is listening to residents' concerns? I don't think so, Ted. I don't think so at all. You own it because you've been there. You go along with it. I sat through these meetings for over a year already, and it's 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. Nobody opposes anything proposed by the administration, but by Gene. Everybody goes along.
All right,
So
let me,
can't run
If
away
I
from
may,
that.
Steve, if I may, if I may.
I would like to move along.
Well, I'd just like to address one point about unintended consequences.
I'll give you another 30 seconds and I'll give Leonard another 30 seconds.
Great Neck Road, unintended consequence, could not be more of a false statement. We had a lot of trouble getting that through. We had opposition from neighboring villages, the county at first, but eventually we had 3 or 4 sets of engineers sign off on it. That is modern traffic engineering, traffic calming. And that's what traffic engineers tell you is needed in the downtown. The reduction from 2 lanes to basically 1 and a passing lane is what every traffic engineer that looked at it said. The purpose of that was to slow down traffic, not unintended consequences, improving safety. You seem to be more concerned about weeds. It's not weeds, it's highway grass, which was part of the federal grant requirements. If you knew what the grant involved, you wouldn't raise the aesthetics of the weeds because that was part of the grant.
Ted,
Not unintended consequences, serious planning.
Ted, let me, we're over by 23 seconds, so you got 53 seconds to respond, Leonard.
All right. I could just tell you that, again, going out and hiring consultants is a wonderful idea, and it's great to hide behind what the consultants tell you. The reality is still the reality. People that live here want to travel on Great Neck Road. People that live here look to go down the road, can't get through, and they sit and they sit and they sit and they sit. The consultants couldn't care less. They got their fees, they did their measurements, and they're done. They walk away, they got their money, and they're gone. And we live with the consequences. So yes, these are unintended consequences. There are unintended consequences, not the consultants. We live here, and it's our problems. And in terms of the weeds, I'm talking about mostly the weeds over by the post office. That place is a disgrace at this point. You planted trees in the wintertime, it seems. They all died, and now we're spending money planting them again, it looks like. Why? I don't understand what's going on, and I'm just fed up with the whole thing, and so are a lot of other people that have told me so.
Okay,
Do I have time now, Steve?
We'll move on. At the end, we'll come back to it. We got a lot of ground to cover. Let me ask now, Leonard, a question. You and your running mates are running as write-in candidates.
Correct.
After your election petitions were disqualified. Could you explain what happened with those petitions and why voters should not be concerned that you lack government experience to run the village if you're not able to file for election petitions?
Well, I think it comes back to the same issue as before. One of these he said, she said kind of things. I explained several times already what happened in terms of the information I was given. And then I was given new information several weeks later. And I didn't know that by changing a date from one date to another invalidated the petition. So I did change the dates, no question about it.
What about the issue of
Yes, sir.
experience? If you've not been in government before, you haven't held a position in village government, how are you able to, take the reins if you don't have that familiarity and your running mates don't have that familiarity with attending meetings and the different other issues that come up?
Well, it's true that anyone entering government comes without experience in government. We're entering government, which is true. However, we have other experiences, other life experiences that translate very readily into managing the government. There are plenty of people in the office now that are pushing all the papers and filling all the forms out and taking care of all that kind of business. And it seems to me that the administration has to manage the people, work with the village attorney, because I've been to all these meetings and I see how the entire board relies very heavily upon the village attorney for all the advice and all the information that's available in terms of village law and county law and state law. So they don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of all these things. It all comes from the attorney that's there. We'll use an attorney also for those kinds of problems to deal with. No problem with that. That's what they're there for. In terms of managing a business, I walked into many organizations and I managed the organization successfully, and I can do it. Monty Ives comes to the plan, to us, to a team, with the experience of a retailer, the knowledge of what it means to be a retailer in town. No one on the board has that kind of experience. They have no clue what it means to make payroll in a business in the retail area. They don't know, but our team does know, and we take them into account. And we're going to listen to the merchants. We also have Robert Fabiola, who is a CEO of his own company. He distributes his products all overseas, in the US and internationally. He's got a business head. We need experienced business people and a business head to run the business and to listen and take care of the people. I'm committed to doing it. Marnie's committed to doing it, and Robert's committed to doing it.
Okay, Ted, do you want to comment on
Yes, I do, Steve. Thank
the
you.
issue of experience and
The whole experience of Mr. Katz and his colleagues not getting on the ballot is very informative, because maybe before he ran or decided to run, he didn't know the election law. But if he's going to run, he has to learn what to do. Number one, we deal with many laws. Yes, we rely upon our attorney, but we know a lot about the legal processes that we deal with. The fact that they didn't take the effort to see what was required. He had 205 signatures on his petitions. The County Board of Elections, bipartisan, determined that he had 205 invalid signatures. So he wound up with zero valid signatures. Some of them were knocked off because he had the wrong date. He attempted to shift responsibility for that, but he signed petitions with the right date well before the deadline. So he knew what the right date is. They made changes on petitions after they were signed. And I will refer to the Great Neck News, March 6th. And there's a quote for Mr. Katz. Quote, "I will take fault for trying to change the petition. I was unaware of what the Board of Elections strict rules were. Katz said, quote, "I didn't know it had to be something that was so exact and could not be changed after the signatures. This gentleman is a financial advisor. You don't have to be an attorney to know that if you have a document signed by other people, you cannot make changes on that document after they signed it." And that's exactly what he did, and he owned up to it. I submit to you the lack of knowledge of the requirements, the lack of candor, changing signed petitions signed by people after they were signed, in and of itself should disqualify this gentleman from running in this election, from having people vote for him. Because if he can't do that, how can he handle the complexities of running a village government?
okay, Leonard, give you a chance to reply.
Thank you. The implication is that in some way we've change things on these petitions. Everyone that signed the petition signed it in full knowledge that we were going to run against the current administration. They were upset and incensed with the insensitivity and the lack of support they've seen from the administration. They wanted us on the ballot. The fact that it was the 18th, not the 19th or the 20th, really wasn't a concern of theirs. It's true, I did not know the election law, and I did not hire an election attorney to do it. We've been bootstrapping this thing to make it happen, and we're reaching out to the people because we want to do what's right by them. Everyone that signed it, it didn't make a difference to them whether it was this date or that date or the other. They wanted you out and they wanted us in. And that's how I looked at it.
Can I ask one question, Steve? One question.
What's that?
Keep on interrupting. This is not what it should be. Every time I'm talking, he
I'm
stops.
asking the moderator if I could ask a question, Steve.
Well, Leonard, are you finished? I'll let Ted interject if you are done.
Well, I wasn't done, but I'll let him interject for a change. Sure, go ahead.
Just answer my question. Did you change petitions in any way after they were signed? Yes or no?
I just said that I changed the date on the petitions. When
Okay,
you
thank you.
phrase it that way, just a minute. When you phrase it that way, the implication is I made major changes. They were not major changes. I did eventually go and look up the election law, and there are places where, when there are signatures on ballots even, if the name is John J. Jones and they put in John Jones, the court has ruled that it's okay. So there are instances where if it's not exactly the same, but the intent is right, it's okay. In my mind, the intent was right, that they wanted you out and they wanted us in. And if it's the 18th or the 19th or the 20th, they didn't care. None of us care. We're tired of what's going on,
Okay.
and we want to change.
If I may,
No, you can't. This is not ready.
Gentlemen, we're going to move on because we have other questions. Let's talk about, again, talking about development. Number one, let me ask you this, Ted. You've been there for 25 years. During that time, if you go back 25 years ago and even 10 or 15 years ago, Neck Plaza was a destination for shoppers in Queens. I happened to own newspapers in Queens at the time, and many of our readers in Bayside and Whitestone and Little Neck would come across. What happened?
Well, you're right. It was a destination. To some extent, it is still a destination. But we would like certainly to do everything we can to bring in merchants into the downtown. Restaurants, food establishments, retail stores that will once again make it a destination for many more people. And that will be one of my goals. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. Things changed. Business changed. 10, 15 years ago, we had the mall situation, box stores, and that was tremendous competition. And way back then, we lost some stores to the competition of the malls. But then, as I said before, the big development in business in the last 10 years, and I actually taught this today in one of my classes, is e-commerce. And we cannot ignore that. Look at all the stores, the name national brands that are going under. Yes, now because of the pandemic, but many of these stores were in trouble before. And unfortunately, similar situations befell different stores in Neck Plaza. Some of these stores that were destination places went out for reasons that had nothing to do with the village. I'm not going to name names, but not every store went out, because of something we did or did not do. Most of the stores went out over the years for other reasons. But absolutely, one of my goals as mayor will be to bring in destinations. And what I plan to do is to bring in a downtown recruiter. We have done that before, okay? This is not the time to do it. Most retail stores are not looking to move or to expand now, but there'll come a time when they will. And to have a professional help us will be very important. We will also do direct marketing to stores. I'm compiling a list of stores in various comparable villages in Nassau County, Suffolk County, that have multiple locations that would be great additions to our village. And in a couple of months, we'll go after these stores.
Okay, Leonard, give you the same question.
Sure. It's interesting. Ted talks about all these wonderful plans he has. And I guess the real question is, where have you been for the last 15 years? Why have you done nothing for any of these things now? All of a sudden, you have all these wonderful plans and schemes and dreams. After the election, if you wind up still being there, they're all going to go away like they've never been here before anyway. You haven't done it. You have to own up that you own the fact that the stores aren't here and you've done nothing to bring them back. You haven't reached out, and that's the reality. Everything sounds great, but you have to own the fact that you didn't do it. No one there did it.
Steve, may I respond?
I didn't finish.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead and finish.
You mentioned the big box stores. I talked about the fact that we have the ability in town with our retailers for personal contact. You walk into a big box store and some clerk is getting $10, $15 an hour. There's no personal service. They're just putting in their time. There's a big difference. The stores that are successful in town now have some internet presence and do give personal service. We've had stores that come in and put a couple of teenagers in there at $15 an hour or something, and the store doesn't make it. Retail is a personal business. Marnie's been there for all these years. Her business has flourished because she's there. There are other owners that are there on premises. They're not absentee owners. You can't compare it to big boxes. It's two different animals. Big boxes didn't put a lot of small guys out of business. If small people went out of business, it's because they didn't run the business the way it should be run. And the administration, again, did nothing to back them up in any manner, shape, or form. So that's all on you, Ted. It's on you and everybody else in that administration. All these wonderful things you're talking about, it's all for the future. What happened for the last 10, 15, 20 years? It didn't happen. Maybe you did something 20. You know, the problem really is you're human. We're all human, certainly. And the tendency is when you walk into an organization, you have all these wonderful ideas and you want to make changes to make things better. That's how we all start out. After a certain period of time, and you've had 20 years to do it, after a certain period of time, whatever's there is yours now. You own it. So your position now is to defend what you've set up because you know it was a great thing. But that was before. You have to move along with the times.
Okay,
that's why I'm proposing term limits. It's enough. We need new people, new ideas, and a change in administration.
Leonard, let me interject a question here.
May I respond to what he just said?
Well, let me ask this question so we can move along some of the discussion, some questions. There is this, many of the people for downtown development have been talking about two things for Great Neck. One is approved on a broad level, mixed-use development, which Great Neck has done, but we're talking about with retail and apartments, but also in terms of it being done beyond just the village of Great Neck and coming up with a plan involving all the villages. There's been a certain newspaper publisher that has been complaining for years about the balkanization of Great Neck and the fact that you have 5 different entities controlling Middle Neck Road. So here's the question. One of the things we hear from developers is that unless you rezone a strip, not require somebody come for a variation, unless you rezone it to allow mixed use, people are going to shy away from coming in here. The second part is, to be successful, they say, you have to go, it has to be coordinated with the other villages. So do you agree with that? I'll ask both of you, do you agree with that? If that's the case, how would you go about working with the other villages?
If I may, I will say yes and no to that question. We are all for cooperating with other villages. We've tried over the years in many different ways. Years ago, I was on the Great Neck VOA traffic committee, and unfortunately, we didn't get cooperation from other villages. Gene Salinger brought in a downtown expert and tried to get villages to work with them, work together to do development along Middle Neck Road. So we've tried in the past. We haven't been successful. Are we willing to work with other villages now? Absolutely. Do we support mixed-use development? Absolutely. Look at the projects that we've had in our village in recent years. Transit-oriented development, mixed use, retail on the bottom and residential on top. Bring more people to live in the downtown. So we support that. The problem is, I don't know that it's workable to come up with a master zoning plan for many of the developable sites that we have in our village. That type of development has to be very site specific. So I'm not saying no to sitting down and talking with the other villages. I would work to do that. Whether or not ultimately we can agree on a comprehensive zoning plan, serious questions that have to be discussed. Maybe we can work it out, maybe we cannot. But certainly I'd be willing to try. But we fully support mixed-use development. Mr. Katz a few minutes ago said we did nothing. And I'm just outraged by that because he's been here for 20 years, but I never remember him coming to a village board meeting before last year. Maybe it had something to do with when he decided to run. Maybe that's why he doesn't know that we did hire a recruiter years ago. We did put together a brochure to market Great Neck Plaza. Trustee Schneiderman, my colleague, okay, worked very hard on this parking study to show people that there is parking. So how Mr. Katz has lived here for 20 years can say that we did nothing just shows me one thing. The gentleman does not know what he's talking about when it comes to Great Neck Plaza.
Okay, Leonard, do you care to respond?
Absolutely. I, like most residents in town, have not gone to village meetings because essentially most of the time, whatever was being talked about really didn't pertain to me. And I didn't take my time to do that, as most of the residents don't. We rely upon the administration to do right by us. But we've seen the results of what you're doing, and you haven't done right by us. As far as I'm concerned, I also worked on the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the chairman of the Legislative Action Committee. And that's the reason why I began to go to board meetings, because the chamber monitors what villages are doing and how it impacts on the retail people in the village. So that's our concern, and that's why I was there. I started to sit at these meetings, hear the kind of chatter that was going on, and I call it chatter because most of it was essentially just a meeting to either find out the size of the lettering on the sign or the color of the awning, or the fact that the phone numbers on the awning, that's a terrible thing, or the sign was 2 inches too big and the man couldn't do any advertising because the sign was 2 inches too big. And the meetings were filled with things like that. I couldn't believe this is what the trustees were focusing on almost sorely. That's all they were doing at that point. In terms of what I would do, I am 127% in favor of meeting with, and I've already reached out to other village officials to talk about these things. And the reality is today, they are looking to do something. What happened 10 years ago, 15, whenever you had this thing, there are new people there, new ideas. You're the guys that are old and stale. You're living in the past. Times have moved on, and it's time the village moves on also.
What do you think?
We can work with these people. We got to put the effort and time in and reach out and spend time with them. And I'm willing to do that.
Are we overdeveloping, or do we need to have mixed use, more mixed use developments?
I think what we have to do is pull together, as I mentioned, the property owners, the retailers, the brokers, and have a full open discussion about these things. I wouldn't say immediately yes or no at this point. My tendency is to think that it's probably a good idea if we do it in the right way. It's got to be in a coordinated way. And the idea of opening up the entire Great Neck corridor, the entire Middle Neck Road, is a phenomenal idea. And I've talked to people about this already. I've also talked with engineers, and I've also talked with business developers that are interested in meeting with my administration and talking about it. Because the word on the street now is that avoid Great Neck, it's too much trouble. We have a couple of projects on the boards now that have been discussed for 3 years. Builders are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just to comply with the change here and the change there. And they got to call in their architects and their engineers and do new drawings and come back next month. And it drags on forever. And they're fed up with it and they don't want to do it anymore. So they're avoiding Great Neck like the plague. and it's time for new leadership and new people to come in, welcoming people. The first thing I would do is put up a sign which says, business is welcome, because they are. They support our tax base, and we need them here. If we don't have that, all of our taxes go up. All of our properties go down.
Couple of quick
We
questions.
want and need that.
If I may,
Before I turn things over to to our attendees, I promised some questions then, and I also promised to keep things relatively short. Ted, you've worked with Jean Salander, Mayor Salander, for a number of years as her deputy. She has been there for a while. Can you tell me, will residents see, if you're elected, will they see any difference in the policy or tone of how the plaza does its business?
yes, they will, and not in any way as a criticism to Mayor Selander. I think she's been a very hardworking, dedicated public servant. But I'm Ted Rosen. I'm not Jean Selander. I'm my own person. Okay. So moving forward, I will do what I believe has to be done. Plus, the world today, with all that we're facing, is a lot different from 5 months ago. So will there be new policies? Will there be new action on the board of the village under my leadership? Absolutely, absolutely. Not in any way to criticize what's done in the past, but we have to move ahead and we have to face the circumstances that present now to ourselves. Mr. Katz said he started going to the village meetings last year. Well, I infer from that for 19 years that he lived here, he was indifferent to the village government. He never came to a meeting until last year, and maybe had something to do with his decision to run. He always is talking about getting everyone together and listening. Listening is great, but I don't hear any specifics. I don't hear any specific plans or ideas. I started to give you, and I have more. I ran out of my time. I gave you specifics. Mr. Katz is listening to everybody. Anybody who comes to one of our trustee meetings, excuse me, knows that we listen.
Ted, Leonard, do you want to talk about what you would bring, you and your slate, to village government? Would it be, how would it differ from what we have right now?
Well, I think in several ways. And it's also interesting, all of a sudden, Ted is turning over a new leaf, and he's going to be a new Ted Rosen. But for all these years, whatever has happened, he said, yes, 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 yes. I never once heard him at a meeting over the last year, certainly, even a little bit more than that, I suppose, right now, a year and a half now with this, but I never once heard him challenge what was going on and object to something that's being said. Everything was 5-0, 5-0. In fact, it was so bad that two meetings, Gene wasn't there, so he as the deputy mayor ran the meeting, which is fine. He called for a vote, and there's only 4 people there, and he said, okay, 5-0. He was so accustomed to saying 5-0 and just going right along with everything. All of a sudden now, I'm going to be different. He had plenty of time. He had 38 years in service to be different, and it didn't happen. Now, all of a sudden, he's going to just the new Ted Rosen coming out. I don't buy it at all, not even close. In terms of what I would do, I think the most important thing right now, which is on top of everyone's mind, is COVID-19. This is something that's been like a pall over the village right now, and it's on everybody's mind. And I think what we need here is what I call this volunteer health commissioner, someone that is experienced, that knows what goes on in these facilities, that can be a help to the facilities, that can be a help to the retailers, that can be a help to the residents, giving them assurances and letting them know what the science is. In addition, I don't know if I mentioned before, but what had happened is that the people in these facilities are getting tested, which sounds wonderful. They get tested once a week. If they get tested on Monday, it gets sent out to a lab. The result comes back on Wednesday. Meanwhile, they've been there Tuesday night, and if they're fine for Monday, you have Thursday, Friday, until the next Monday again. And that's where they have constant lockdowns going on in these places, because it's not enough. They have to get the right kind of equipment and test every day. When the employees walk in, they get tested. Either it's good or they go home. They don't walk in and infect all the people there.
Okay, let me ask
If
one
I may,
final
can I respond to
question.
that?
Let me ask one final question before I get into some of the things that questions that have been asked by the attendees, who we want to do it. Let me ask with one final question of, are there any other quality of life questions that you think that are, what do you think are the number one issues for quality of life in the plaza right now? Ted, I'll go with you.
Well, I just want to take a minute to respond to Mr. Katz's idea about the health department. That belies a lack of understanding of how village government and county government work together. There's serious questions as to whether we could step in and do some of the health department functions without buying it all. But even if you say that that could be done, and we're not in a position to take over the entire health department functioning in our village, it would be a very expensive proposition. This is 2020. It's not 1930, where village government could run on a volunteer doctor. This is serious hard work, okay? You need professionals who are paid. I don't even know who this gentleman is that Mr. Katz is talking about. He's a doctor. Well, what type of doctor? Is he an infectious disease doctor? These are serious questions. You need serious professionals working on these problems, and you can't do it with part-time volunteers who may or may not be qualified. What are the challenges facing Great Neck Plaza in terms of quality of life? Three things. Number one, and they're all important, maintain, support the downtown in various ways that I described. Number two, maintain services for our residents. We pride ourselves in performing the municipal service that we do well. Our streets are clean, we remove the snow. We're in a project now, state of good repair, to repair all the roads in our village. Mr. Katz said that there was favoritism in selecting which streets are going to be done first. And that's absolutely false. An engineering firm did that. And if he looked at it, he would know that my street, which is also the street of another trustee, is in the last category. So that shows a lack of diligence to the truth.
Excuse me, I never said that.
Excuse me, bring back some of the excuse me.
All right,
if you never said that, it was reported to me that you said,
there's a big difference. If someone tells you something I said is not something I said, you
clarified that.
Okay.
Bring back poetry programs, bring back summer concerts, art openings. The village is many things to many people, and that's quality of life. And the number three goal is to practice fiscal restraint. We're in a very tough time fiscally. Our net loss of revenue to date compared to last year is approximately $300,000. And that's a reality that we have to deal with. So we really have to be very fiscally prudent. And we have 4 vacancies in employment in the village. So we have to perhaps defer replacing some of those people for some time. Scrutinize as we did and do every expenditure. We are desperately trying to complete that state of good repair project. We may probably have to push it into the next fiscal year. We have to look at agreements with other municipalities to do cost sharing and save money. And we have to do, as the mayor has done for many years, explore other sources of revenue, very hard in this climate. Grants, special funding programs, state assistance, and federal assistance.
Okay, I hate to cut you short, but we'll get some chance at the end. Leonard, do you want to give what you consider to be the quality of life, the chief quality of life issues that are facing the plaza?
Well, I think the most important thing that I've heard from residents is the fact that the downtown has deteriorated so much that it saddens them all, as it saddens me certainly, and they want to see a revival in that. That's really where our quality of life is. It's the town we live in, the streets we walk on, and that's got to be, something has to be addressed with that. I mean, Ted talked about all these plans again for doing things in the future, and all I'm saying is, where have they been until now? But they've done.
Mr. Blank, what's one specific you would do, Mr. Katz? One specific.
Ted, let Leonard go on. It's his turn.
I thought he finished.
Thank you. So, in addition to that, of course, I think that people are concerned with the fact that when they have a problem, they feel they have nowhere to go. They feel that when they call a village, they're very unresponsive. Things don't happen. I met someone 2 days ago We had that storm a week or so ago, and some branches fell down and hit the wires, and he was out of power for 4 or 5 days. And he called PSE&G, and he called the village, and the village said, well, it's not our wire, it's someone else's wire. The village seems very adapted, saying it's not me, it's somebody else, so it's not my problem. It may not be the village's problem, but again, people expect the village to stand up for them, not walk away and say, deal with it on your own. That's what they're there for. They represent us, and they haven't done it. So all these great plans he has, you're going to do this and do that. Where's it been all this time? It hasn't happened. Why should we believe it's going to happen now if when he had the opportunity for the last 20 years, it didn't happen?
Okay.
Steve, can I ask 2 questions?
You know, I'm looking at, let me say this. I'll give both of you a chance because we're out of time. I think most of the I see the chat and the questions that we have, and I think that they're kind of responding and in areas that we've already covered. So what I'd like to do here, if that's all right, because I think all the main topics that have been addressed that I see in the chat. So I'll start with Leonard. I'm going to give you a chance. We'll do this 3 minutes. I'm going to keep time.
Is this the closing?
This is the closing.
Okay.
We're going to get to the closing. Okay, so we're going to start with the closing comments, and we're going to let Leonard, we'll let you start. So you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Stephen. I think we have here, excuse me, I think we have here an unpolished, a tarnished gem, I suppose you'd call it, a tarnished diamond. It's been tarnished by the lack of care and concern that should have been given to it for many, many years, and it hasn't happened, and that's why we maintain it's time for a change. I think with some polishing, Great Neck can shine again and become what I call the flagship village of the North Shore Gold Coast. We can do it if we work together. I believe we have a wealth of talent and experience in this town that is untapped. I will reach out to people. I disagree with Ted 120%. I reached out to an infectious disease doctor who's retired now, and he's willing to come on a volunteer basis and put in the time to work with those senior citizen facilities and the retailers and give some comfort and care to the residents that they feel comfortable coming out and walking the streets of our town. It's there. It's there. If you spend the time and you care to look for it, it can happen. And I think working together, we can make these things happen. People are reasonable. Everybody has to compromise. You can't just say, we tried this 12 years ago and it didn't work. That was 12 years ago. Times change, people change, new people are here, new ideas have to happen, and you gotta be open to it. And this village has not been. They're defending the status quo. And if that's what you want, then that's what you're gonna get. If you want change and you wanna see good things happen for this village, then you have to vote for me and Monty Ives for trustee and Robert Farajola for trustee. We will get the job done. We will work together. We'll call together the brokers and the real estate people and the retailers and the population that's here, our residents, to talk with them, see what they want, not what we think they should have, not the outside experts, people that live here and have to live here the day after tomorrow and the day after that. That's who we're dealing with. And we're going to do that. We're going to find out what their concerns are. We're going to address those concerns, and we will take care of it. And we will grow this village back to where it was and where it should be as far as I'm concerned. We'll work with neighboring villages. We'll work with the town of North Hempstead and Nassau County. We will get things done. Grants are out there. Anybody can file for a grant. To do a grant and then take money out of the till and put in $30,000, $40,000, $90,000 for a project that we get an award for that has some of these consequences that we're not happy with, I won't do that. If we get money for nothing, because it's a special grant, that's not a bad idea. But to take our hard-earned tax dollars and put it in some project because some consultant recommended it who doesn't live here, that's not what we should do, I don't think. We should spend our tax money wisely. I don't have all the numbers because you can't get the numbers. You got to do a FOIA request. I just did a FOIA request for absentee ballots. How many ballots do they have? I don't know when they're going to respond to it. By the time they respond, the election could be over for all I know. I want to have transparency. The meetings should be, as they do it in the Village of Great Neck, they're recorded. They're online. You could see what happens, who says what, and what's being talked about. Everybody should know what's going on. It's our village. It's our money. We should know what's happening. And right now, most of it don't. And we're not going to go and spend our time.
We're past the 3:30 mark. So
All right.
You want to wrap it up in just a couple of more words?
Well, yes, please come out and vote. Vote for Leonard Katz for mayor, Monty Ives and Robert Faragiola for trustee, and we will make things happen. Let's get together and do it.
Okay. Ted, the final word on
Yes.
why we should vote for Ted Rosen and his.
Thank you, Steve. I would ask the people listening to this dialogue to listen very carefully and critically to what Mr. Katz has said. Transparency. We are very transparent. We have a verbatim transcript of every meeting. Mr. Katz knows that. He's requested the transcript 17 times.
Excuse me, point of information. You have to request it.
Leonard, let.
He interrupts us all day. I can't interrupt.
If you get the transcript, if you have to pay for it,
comments.
the transcript is not minutes. The transcript is every word. If I repeat a word twice, it shows up in the transcript, okay? Probably doesn't show up in minutes. Listen to what Mr. Katz said. Come away, I submit, with these observations. No specifics, except for hiring a retired doctor who's going to be a volunteer. This shows a lack of understanding of government in the year 2020. I didn't hear any specific suggestion how you're going to improve the downtown. It shows a lack of ideas, a lack of knowledge of how government works. As I said at the beginning, we are living in a very difficult time with serious challenges, personally and in government. We have experience. The write-in candidates opposing us have no experience, and they have a demonstrated record of inability. Just think about this. You're driving home at night in a car with two other people, and it's stormy. Who's going to drive the car? One of the people who has years of driving experience and a record of safe driving? Or are you going to turn over the driving function to a person who was unable to pass his road test and with no experience in driving the car? All right? Think about that. I respectfully submit to the people listening, we have the experience. We have a proven record. The opposition does not. We ask for your support as we move ahead through the months and years that face us in the future. Thank you very much. And I thank, again, the Great Neck News for setting this up. And I thank all the participants that came on to watch this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank our panelists for participating in a robust discussion where we were able to cover a lot of ground. I'd like to thank our attendees for being here and participating in an important democratic process. I think that this year that we are all very aware of the need to vote and understand that who we vote for has consequences. So I'm glad that you're taking the time to familiarize yourself with these issues and with the candidates who are running and spending time. As we mentioned, we will have this, North Shore Public Television will have the show. We have it on our Facebook page. We will have it on our website. Rob's story will be in the Great Neck News this week. So again, I thank our panelists and our attendees. Rob came in specially because he had concerns about my technical skills, so he made sure that it went smoothly. I don't know where he got that idea that I lack technical skills, but he might be right. So thank you again and good evening. Look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stay safe, everybody. Stay safe.
Okay. Bye-bye.